In a world surrounded by franchises, reboots, and shared universes, an elite team of podcasters will risk body and soul to investigate the depths of intellectual properties, one multiverse, subgenre, and trend at a time. Who are we? We're the IP Squad. Welcome back to the IP Squad and our ongoing investigation into films based on pulp and comic strip heroes. I'm John Campbell. Joining me during this investigation, of course, it's the Jones Boys.
Present and accounted for.
Yeah, Specs always gets here on time. I have a little timing issue that I'm still working on there. Because I'm from the street.
That's right.
We don't carry watches, John.
We don't carry watches. You show up in your street clothes. Brendan's in, of course, a nice three-piece suit.
Robin, do the streets ever... Well, I'm not going to say they scream, but do the streets ever kind of go, hey, how you doing? Do they talk to you?
The streets talk to you.
Okay.
But you know what doesn't happen? The city never screams at you because it's polite.
Yeah.
Central City apparently has quite the voice.
Would you say that the city...
It's a little vulgar. I'm learning to understand.
Do either of you feel like you have some sort of incestuous relationship with the city where it is your mother and or your lover at the same time?
Yes. I know. It's so creepy.
You know, I'm not here to talk about feelings, John.
That's right.
It reminds me, I think, of a Tick thing, which was either in the... I'm pretty sure it was not in the cartoon, but it was in the comic... and then probably also the most recent version. But I think it was like, the city, my city, I'm in you.
Yep.
It was like, I'm in you, city.
I wish we were talking about the Tick. That would be a much friendlier. By the way, an amazing property. I think we've talked about.
Where's that IP Squad? Ooh,
that is a great IP Squad because that is a rare property where every single version of it has been good. I have loved from the comic to the animated series to the sitcom to the streaming show. They've all been great.
All of them were good. Well,
the
toys are good too.
The toys are great.
Hey, Robin, you muted yourself. You're talking and we're not hearing you.
That's because on the streets we don't pay attention to what buttons we push. You hear me?
Guys. I couldn't get the city to shut up. That's why I had to turn the mute on.
Yeah, the mute.
No, I was going to say my esteemed colleague brother. That would be where the nitpicking would shine the most. I think if we did the IP Squad on just the Ticks, all the various Tick adaptations, because we'd all be in agreement to how much we loved it. Yeah. So it would fall on Brendan to just go, but in minutes.
I mean, it would just maybe going, I love the sitcom version, but they chickened out on the masks. And I'm like,
right. Or, that whole thing. So,
that's too much Warburton. That's just too much. It's just right there.
We should not see so much Warburton.
Give the people what they want, which is all Warburton all the time, baby.
Unfortunately, we're not talking about the Tick. We're talking about Will Eisner's Spirit.
We're talking about...
Year is this?
This is from 2008. And it's what I've been calling to everyone, Frank Miller's Will Eisner's The Spirit. Because this is this is up there for the weirdest movie we've done yet, I think. This is a pretty weird movie, which is kind of what I keep saying this, very minor defense of it is it's really weird. And I remember seeing it in the theater and thinking, God, this is weird.
Yeah, but yes, weird does not equate to worth, but it is weird.
No, but let me say, it's certainly not a forgettable movie. It's a very strange film, and I mean, there's a part of me that kind of respects that he spent a bunch of studio money to make something very weird.
Right. Yeah. And he had full creative control, I believe. I don't think he.
Yeah. This is the last moment.
There is no director's cut of The Spirit because that was what was released.
There is not a single moment where I felt like a studio got involved in anything in this movie.
No,
but,
not at all.
Other than I do think, this is my one thing, I do think the studio was like Frank Miller, Sin City it. I do think that they were.
I don't think they did.
You don't think that?
I think that they wanted it because
I think that's why they allowed it, was that they said
there was a precedent for that being successful and that being the thing he does. And so I don't think it took much of a nudge, but I think they were like, if you want to go ahead and shoot it like Sin City.
No, I mean, from what I understand, they did approach him, and actually they'd approach other people, as you probably know, and they approached Frank Miller, and he was like, "Oh, I couldn't," but he had just come off Sin City, and then he stops after a few minutes and is like, "No, I'm the only one who can. I have to do it." The thing is that the reason I think it's Sin City isn't because of any kind of external pressures. I think him just by Robert Rodriguez's side during Sin City, the making of Sin City, he was like, "Oh God, you can do this, and you can turn it into a black and white graphic thing, which is what my art already has become. One color and black and white." I think he just went, "Yeah, that's how you do it.
That's how you make
this
movies.
Is the best way." And I don't think the studio was going, "Please make it visually a copy of Sin City." I think he just was like, "I know how to do it because I saw Robert do it. This is great."
I think they went in on the Sin City.
And obviously, those conversations took place in the studio where they knew what they were getting. I mean, I think to, in defense of what you're saying, it's not, as John kind of intimated, the studio saying make it like Sin City. It was just like, we'll let him do it. I'm sure it'll be as big as Sin City.
They're just like, go make this move. We don't.
Yeah.
It's Michael Uslan, who one of the guys, and he's the guy who was behind
Uslan and Melniker.
Batman.
Uslan and Melniker. They've produced every Batman movie.
Right, and Shadow too. I think they had a hand in Shadow.
I believe
they
did.
So
and
I'm going to do the history part. Too. One thing I will say is this movie is what I'm interested about is looking at the responses of people who don't know the Spirit at all. I think. I mean, obviously, I'm wrapped up in how awful a take this is on the source material. But I think, generally speaking, and the money obviously shows it, that people who had no idea who the character was, even they walk away going, "What did I just watch?"
Well, I will say it doesn't make a ton of sense as a movie if you came into this. We'll talk about it, but it's a weird thing where I think you needed to know a little bit of the Spirit, and then if you did, you probably won't like it.
And then if you did know, you were going to still be pissed off.
But if you know nothing, then the movie's just like, what the hell did I just see?
Yeah, and really the plot's not so hard to follow. It's just that, anyway, we'll get there.
Yeah.
All right, so the Spirit, yes. Here's the thing I always am fascinated about is that Will Eisner, the great writer and artist, who's one of the greatest one of the greatest comics creators of all time.
Named a goddamn award after him. Yeah. He's basically, his name is the
original textbook
comic book industry.
Sequential art. I mean, he wrote the original texts on it, and you look at any of Prime, because he starts rough like a lot of them, but when you look at the Prime stuff, when he's cooking in the 50s, and you sit there going like, who else could have done this? The way he tells the story. But anyway, so what fascinates me is this is a case of comics came out in 1936. The American comic book is created then, and basically it's reprints of old comic strips that they could get cheap and bundle them and stapled them together. Then it becomes, what if we do original material? So what they started doing, what American comics became, was original material that all of the newspapers turned down. Every single early comic artist wanted to be a newspaper comic strip artist. They didn't know comics. They didn't care. So
it wasn't a thing.
And the newspapers didn't give a crap about any of that stuff because they turned it down until Superman, until 38, when superheroes are introduced, and suddenly comic books are selling like crazy. And this is where it gets to the Spirit is, at that point, newspapers are like, they've stolen our thunder. And they go to Will Eisner, who at the time had a studio with Jerry Iger, the Eisner-Iger studio, which was essentially, this is so cool, they were freelancers who would come up with new characters and assign them to some of their artists and writers and like do some 8-pagers, do some short stories. And they weren't working for DC or Timely or, all that stuff. They were their own shop, and then they would sell them to all these Quality and Fox Comics and all these other people.
Is that how Plastic Man started?
Yes. Out of the same studio. And it was Police Comics had Spirit and Plastic Man in it. And that was for Fox, I think. But anyway, so yes, the Eisner-Iger studio really only lasted 3 years, but they launched a whole bunch of characters, including Sheena and Plastic Man and yes, the Spirit. But the Spirit wasn't for the comic books, and the Spirit is what led to the Eisner-Iger studio separating.
Correct.
Because this newspaper syndicate goes up to Will Eisner and goes, "Hey, could you do like a comic book for the newspaper?" And he's like, "That seems backward." And they're like, "No, we want to get in on that superhero thing." And he goes, "Okay, sure." But because of the deal, the way it would work out, he could not continue to run that shop. So Iger went off on his own. They split amicably, I guess. And what Eisner came up with, because he didn't want to do superheroes, he wanted to do kind of like these street level crime stories. And so he put a mask on the guy. And literally the newspapers are like going, is he a superhero? He goes, "Sure, look, he's got a mask."
Yeah,
but the whole thing with the Spirit was, there are no superpowers. This movie, again, gets that wrong. The only thing is in the origin is that Denny Colt, the cop, he stops a mad scientist type guy in his first story. Dr. Cobra, very good. And he gets doused with this chemical, which puts him in suspended animation. So he seems to be dead. They bury him. He wakes up in the crypt. Not in like the coffin.
They don't bury him. Yeah, that's key. They don't actually bury him. They put him in the Colt family
because
crypt.
He turns the crypt into his hideout, headquarters,
which is a sweet hideout. That's pretty awesome.
It's a sweet hideout, and I've Wildwood Cemetery. It's all great. Yeah, and actually, Eisner didn't even come up with the name Spirit. It was the editor guy who was getting him the job was like, give him a ghosty name. He's like, I don't know, call him the Ghost. And he's like, that is the most boring. So he goes, what about the Spirit? He goes, ooh, I still don't like it, but okay. Literally, he didn't care.
No, it's not. It's not like one of those biopic movie things where like, say that again.
Yeah, it's not.
Right. Citizen Kane.
Yeah. What? Yeah.
But so it is a thing where they called it the Spirit section of the newspaper. It was always about 8 pages, so it was like a comic story every week in the newspaper, full color. And it lasted from 40 to 52, 12 years. And then he continued doing the Spirit in various comics and stuff up into the 90s, but sporadically. Yep. And the thing is, it's so famous and it was so inspirational, mainly because he did different things with the storytelling. It was slightly more intelligent and more adult than what was coming out in the comic books. It was never like gritty, but it was just better written and considered.
It was on its way.
He was writing short stories, and that's what it was. And sometimes there'd be sci-fi or weird horror stuff, but it was really very often just like thugs and, of course, femme fatales. Lots of those. Femmes fatales.
I guess that's one thing this movie does kind of get right is lots of
except for
ladies.
It doesn't either. I mean, here's what I mean. Yes, and those characters that are in the movie are from the comic strip, but the thing is, the movie decides that the Spirit really can't help himself, and he's an inveterate ladies' man. In the comic strips, in the comic book, the running gag is yes,
they throw themselves
at him, and he's befuddled by it all the time.
Yeah,
he's kind of tempted, but really Ellen is the one for him. So Sans Serif or whoever, Miguel or whoever is like coming on to him, and he's getting flustered. He was a schlub. The thing in the comic strips I love is he is Jim Rockford with a mask on, because he doesn't have the money, and he's always
getting beaten out.
Yeah,
and he
Brendan,
does not.
do you have the action figure I sent you for Christmas or your birthday?
Yeah,
still?
I still have the Spirit. Yeah, and it came with the.
It has a choice of
individual letters for his name, so you could stack them just like Eisner would do.
Yeah. But also the choice between
the two heads. One has the hat, and the other one it doesn't have the hat, and it has like a scar and blood coming out. It's awesome. But anyway, so the thing is, the movie makes him healing powers and all that stuff, and he doesn't have any powers in the comic strip. It's just he realized, oh, if everyone believes Denny Colt is dead, I can be this outside of the law cop.
And he puts
it
together
what he is.
Because I did. So after I finished watching this movie, I did go to my bookshelf and I pulled this out. Which I've been collecting the Spirit Archive hardcovers from DC that are really nice.
Is that Kitchen Sink Publishers?
No, I think it's DC.
It's DC. Yeah, no, it's DC.
It's a DC archive.
These are DC proper archives.
DC had the Spirit rights for quite a while.
Yes.
Okay.
Up till fairly recently.
Yeah, Dynamite has them now and has for the last several years. Because my buddy Dan, not to name drop here, but drew the Spirit for a while.
That's right.
Yeah, which was pretty cool. But yeah, so I went back and actually read the Spirit from the beginning, the first probably year of it. I read, and they talk about, because they were like you said, like 7 to 8 page. These go down smooth.
Yeah.
You can you can whip through these, and they're really fun.
Yes.
But yeah, it's interesting though reading this immediately after watching the movie, because you go like, there are bits and pieces that you're like, oh, he kind of captured this, but then spun it.
Well, I mean, Frank Miller knew all that stuff. He's making Frank Miller choices that override the source material and make you go, what? What? If you know the source material, if you don't, you're just going, this is the weirdest.
Yeah,
really,
it's not approachable. It's not approachable.
The movie should have been closer to Dick Tracy. Really,
yeah, I
it should have been.
There are points when Frank Miller knows that too. And I'm watching it going like, he is blending Sin City with Dick Tracy. He even has that close-up profile where he goes, I'm on my way. He actually puts that in there. I'm
that's the thing. There are moments.
And by the way, can I say something else about? I'm sorry, 1 second. One thing that always drove me crazy. He has stylized this world like Batman the Animated Series or something, where it's in a nebulous time period. Everyone's wearing hats and there's kind of a 40s vibe, but they've got cell phones and it's the modern world. Every time they did a pop culture reference, and all this is Frank Miller, you can lay all this at his feet. I'm sitting there going, that exists in this world? Yeah, because they're making reference to Robin, the Boy Wonder. They're making so that is a comic book that we all know about in the spirits world. What they make a reference to Superman the movie, the throwaway line of like, I guess a man can't.
You'll believe a man can't fly.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff, and Quick Draw McGraw, and I'm like, what are you? Stop it.
Yeah,
stop it, because that is trying to make it our world, and that ain't our world. And
because one of the interesting things, so I'm a huge fan. I mean, I love the original Spirit, but I particularly love the Darwin Cook Spirit. I think that and a lot of that.
Yes.
The Darwin Cook Spirit is great because he did that same thing where it's nebulous, but there are cell phones and the internet. He doesn't do the pop culture references, but I like that idea of the Batman animated series of it.
I don't mind that,
but I'm saying I think that, to me, if you want to read a modern take on the Spirit, I think the Darwin Cook Spirit is a really good example of still very much doing the Eisner comic, but writing it for a modern audience.
I'm going to talk for 45 minutes about how much I love Darwin Cook.
Well, Darwin Cook. The dude was a
the
genius,
late great Darwin Cook,
an amazing, and talk about that was unlike a Frank Miller, because Frank Miller on paper. Aside from the famous Miller Eisner book, but in some ways, even that book is almost about their contrasting styles in some ways, right?
Yeah, it's a conversation, and they don't agree with each other a lot,
right?
And they frustrate.
But Darwin Cook is like, well, duh. Like Darwin Cook doing the Spirit makes a ton of sense.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that there's the idea that Frank Miller was like, I'm the only one that can, and I'm the only one that should.
I'm the only one that
he wasn't doing out of ego. He was doing it out of a protective thing, like someone else is going to screw it up.
I don't think I wouldn't go. I wouldn't go so far as to say the only one he thought he was the only one who can, but the only one who should. I think is better. Like he took the Zack Snyder. Like, let me screw it up because I love, let me take this so that no one else gets their hands on it. I know this thing, which is weird.
Well, unfortunately, he's absolutely wrong because we were talking about this, yesterday, is that there are plenty of people that would have gotten the same source material closer. I mean, the movie closer to the source material and still would have delivered something modern, zippy, and so forth. Yeah. And of course, because we watched The Rocketeer, I said Joe Johnston. Exactly. Yeah. And obviously, if Brad Bird's animated film had gotten off the ground, it would have been amazing. He was actually trying to do it.
Yeah. What about the fact that in the 70s, William Friedkin was trying to do it? Now, I don't know what
Friedkin loved the material. I just don't know. I
feel like that would have gotten pretty gritty, though. I feel like that would have
gotten pretty gritty.
French Connection. Gene Hackman is Denny Colt as the
The thing that I can see why it flips over.
Gene Hackman is the octopus, and you never see his face.
There you go.
That's what I say about that.
And yes, Robin, yes, it so bugged me. I love Mr. Jackson. And with a love that knoweth no bounds. I
gotta say though, I do really enjoy him.
But the octopus is off camera always. He is never seen in the comics.
Here's the thing early Blofeld. Yes. That's what he's supposed to be.
That being said, he is a high point in this movie to me because my God, nobody wants to be there more than Samuel L. Jackson, who's having the time of his life.
But he's given jibber jabber to say.
Oh, it's jibber jabber to say, but
he's not coming up with all that nonsense about except for eggs. What?
It's a weird movie. It's a weird movie. But here's the interesting thing about this that I think, because this is the way I view the movie, and I feel like this is the only way to view the movie in a lot of ways, is it's so interesting that he thought, I've got to be the guy to do this because somebody else is going to screw it up. And then this movie is not an adaptation of Will Eisner's The Spirit. This is Frank Miller going, what if I created the Spirit? I'm going to take all these things and do my Frank. That's why I really do think it is Frank Miller's Will Eisner's The Spirit. It is. It is the what if Stan Lee created the DC universe? It's what if Frank Miller created the Spirit? Is how I view this movie. And so because you have to you're going to drive yourself insane, which obviously, Brendan, you have, and that's fair. Trying to make this jibe as in any way adapting the
Brendan,
comic.
We've called the doctors.
I agreed. But I let that go 5 minutes into the movie. You have to, or else you're going to just bash your head against a wall.
No, I mean, you're allowed to not not enjoy.
Oh, that's true.
You don't have to go, you know what? I'm in the wrong frame of mind. No, the frame of mind I am in is I love the Spirit. Let's see a Spirit movie.
Right, but I'm saying, but how long into the movie before you go? Obviously, they're not going to do that. So I guess that's.
But then you stew, and I don't walk out of movies. I don't. If it's something that's on TV, I will maybe change the channel. But if I've gone to see the movie, and I did when opening weekend, because I'm excited, Frank Miller doing The Spirit, and I'm like, really, black and white? Well, I mean, because. The Spirit, if nothing else, it pops. It's always
that is
because it was all in
an immediately strange choice.
Yeah, an immediately strange choice. But even then, I'm like, let's see what he does. Then I go and I watch it. I'm not going to walk out. But yeah, I stewed through the entire thing. Yeah. I can appreciate Samuel L. Jackson's enthusiasm. He's a lot of fun. Obviously, I have no problem with a cast of extremely beautiful women, where the camera's like going, hey, you like that? You like that?
Almost on a Roger Ebert level, right?
Oh,
right,
my God.
I was actually shocked to see that Ebert didn't like this movie because this feels like
I read his review, and he did say it's completely soulless, which is a big problem too.
I think that's
similar. The early days of this sort of completely CG filmmaking, this feels a little bit like Sky Captain, which we'll be talking about soon, in the fact it feels hollow. But also it's not helped by the fact that he wants everyone to speak in a very stylized manner and act in a stylized manner. There's no emotional, you can't hang on to anything.
And it's interesting, what you watch is some people are better at that than other people in this movie. Because they're doing that because this. I love Frank Miller, of course I do, but he's not a director. He's sure as hell not an actor's director by any stretch of the imagination. And so I do think when you excise Rodriguez from the process, no shit, he doesn't get great performances out of people, right? Because it's just like
it's not just the great performances, is that also, and he is a great comic creator, and his writing on the page, married with his art, most of the time, is stunning.
Of course.
Okay. He was a great comic creator.
Yeah, I didn't want to go there, but yes, there's been a steady decline and steady self-parody. This movie feels... This movie, to me, even taking out source material, if I did not know who the Spirit was, but I knew who Frank Miller was, this movie feels like someone parodying Frank Miller. And that's a problem.
Absolutely.
He's writing self-parody kind of Mickey Spillane nonsense. Well, you know what else the Spirit never does in the comic strips? Interior monologue. He just doesn't have it. And he's not sitting there going, no. There's always an omniscient narrator. Or sometimes he'll do something where like monologue. the thug guy who's going to end up in jail will narrate, like going, I didn't know it was
from a different character's point of view.
To tell you the truth, the closest. What's funny is Frank Miller is leaning so Mickey Spillane because that's his jam.
Once again, that sort of became his thing.
Yeah, but Will Eisner was leaning very hard Damon Runyon, where it's all mooks and characters and little short stories, and there's a romanticness to it, and also kind of a
fable quality,
quality.
Yeah.
And it's like the stories of the lower rung, and there's a lot of course, wacky slapstick comedy. None of that shows up in this. Frank Miller just taking trappings.
There are moments of slapstick comedy, but they're weird because they stand out from how grim the rest of the movie is. When his suspenders are caught on the flagpole and stuff like that in this movie, and he's doing the kicking, whoa.
Yeah, that doesn't work though.
No, but that's the thing is
it wasn't funny.
And the Three Stooges aspect of Louis Lombardi's clones.
That's what I'm saying. He does try to bring in some of that.
Those guys. Those are some of my favorite parts in the movie.
Another guy who is there to play. I think actually everybody is here to play. I don't think anybody here is like, I'm half a step out of this movie.
But the script is terrible. That's what I was kind of getting around to, is that Frank Miller is to blame for all the things in this movie that I don't like. And unfortunately, he's the guy who wrote and directed it.
Yeah.
He is responsible for setting up those shots. As an artist, he's creating some amazing graphics on screen.
Because the guy is a
some of it, like I said, if there's no dialogue, and if I just muted it and looked at it, I'd be like, good God, look at that.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah, there
unfortunately, there's a story he's trying to tell, and it's nonsense.
Yeah,
and I've got to find the blood of Hercules, and and like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
We are brothers under the skin because of the what?
Yeah, I mean that's all just like
the octopus was the coroner. What? The octopus.
Yeah.
It's all, like I said, all that stuff is, it's nonsense.
Then you're left with nothing, man. I mean, you're left with some amazing visuals and some actors who are fun to watch.
Yeah.
I think Scarlett Johansson is actually very good.
I think she's also having
in
a
her
very good time.
Ava Mendez is trying, and she certainly gets very attractive.
But she gets the worst of...
She's doing a different movie, though. I mean, the whole, kids until they meet again as adults thing. That's a different movie.
Well, that's why
from a lot of the rest of the movie.
That is kind of true to their origin, though. They did know each other as youngsters.
But he needed
someone.
This is what I'm talking about. He needed he needs a Rodriguez or somebody to come in, and not even just with the directing, but just to go, because the script does feel like there's a bunch of Miller ideas, right? It's like this and that.
Yeah, and they all need to be excised and replaced with Eisner ideas.
Well, no, but I'm saying, just in general, ignoring the commitment to the source material, just in general, as a film, the movie's very disjointed.
The tone is
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He needs a screenwriter, a real screenwriter to come in and go, okay, see this part, Frank, if you need to excise this and move these two things together and just
this maybe could have been better. It's still he was the wrong guy for the job.
He's a weird choice.
But you know, when you have stuff like Sans Serif come in and do the thing with the Xerox machine, and I'm just like, and it becomes I'm like, Jesus, that's a Frank Miller. There's a creepiness to it too that I'm like,
no. There's a lot of Miller in this thing, and yes,
he made a couple of smart choices. I will list them now. One of them was Ellen being given a more agency, like an actual role in the comic strips. Ellen is the commissioner's daughter, and she's a very
Betty.
proactive
she's basically
character.
Betty from Archie comics.
Yeah, but she's essentially a socialite, and he wrote her intelligently, but the problem is that she didn't have much to do other than care for him and worry about him and get captured. That was always the thing. It's like Octopus probably had her tied up a million times. It's like, I've got her, Spirit. So he did a smart thing, making her a doctor,
and
that was good.
Casting an amazing actress.
Sarah Paulson, of course,
amazing, and who I think feels old timey and gets the humor inherent. I think some of the best scenes in the movie are between her and Mocked, who I think is also an excellent
I think Mocked is great.
I think Mocked is
I think
great
Mocked,
spirit.
had this been close to the source material, would have still been a good choice. I think he could have delivered that kind of like, golly gee, wow.
He nails that like strip. I'm an old comic book. He steps right. I've always thought
Plus,
that
he
guy
looks amazing. He looks amazing.
I remember watching Suits and always just going,
Paulson,
this guy's a superhero.
just seeing her in Down with Love, she can do this kind of stylized.
She knows the period
I
stuff.
actually feel like she's gotten so far into the Ryan Murphy like goofiness over there.
Well, he's in everything. I mean, she's in everything.
But I'm saying that kind of bums me out, because when I see her in other stuff, like when I saw her on The Bear, I'm like, oh right, you're one of the best actresses out there. And but instead, Brian Murphy buries you under makeup and has you do weird accents and and just nonsense. It's very fun.
I think she just looks at it as like doing summer stock or something, where you get a chance to play.
I'm sure that's very fun, but you're like, this woman is immensely charming, and I think she's great in this.
It's okay, John. It's gonna be all right.
No,
Sarah's gonna be just fine.
I'm just get her away from Ryan Murphy.
The other thing I think he did that was, it's not. I don't think he did the farthest thing you could do. He decided he just would not deal with Ebony White,
which I think
he just decided he was not going to include him at all. And that is
a great
smart.
Yeah.
However, I will say the TV movie, which is not, it's also not great.
I was gonna say I'm not sure the TV movie is much better than this.
But what they did was they did update. I think Ebony White can be updated.
Well, it's Darwin Cook did it once again.
Darwin Cook did it.
He just made him a smart, capable young black man who
and
drove
actually,
a taxi.
Even Eisner's Ebony White, unfortunately, is a ethnic
racist
stereotype
caricature
that's nightmarish to look at. But at the same time, he is treated as an equal, and very often is the guy who saves the day. Though he talks in this patois that you're like, oh, boy.
That's the problem. But if you actually see what I agree. When you see what he's doing in the comic, he actually is a very capable character, but he's just buried under shockingly racist caricatures of the time.
And even Eisner in later days was like going, I really wasn't trying to set out to do this thing. Goes, this was the language of the time, as in this is how you present these characters.
I certainly can understand people picking up those and going, Jesus Christ, no
absolutely.
way.
And they're absolutely right. And it's
horrifying.
Painful to look at. And that man is
a
gorgeous
it's like
artist.
Black Hawk with Chop,
Yeah, exactly.
Green Lantern with Pie Face, and
also one of the greatest, if not the greatest, comic strip artist of all time, Milton Caniff. I mean, Terry and the Pirates is a masterwork. I read the whole thing. I've got all the volumes. I've read his entire run. The storytelling, amazing. The art, amazing. And he's not disrespectful to the Chinese characters, but they are such stereotypes. You've got Connie, short for Confucius, and you've got Big Stoop, who is a mute, giant very strong but lovable, lunky Chinese guy.
Yeah.
And it's just, you sit there going like, wow, look at the teeth he drew on them. And you're like, oh man.
Yeah, it's just an it's the same thing with watching screwball comedies of the 30s, and I love them. But every black character is a maid or butler going, yes, so I've been,
Now
like,
hold on, you have behind you right now at least 3 posters of Rochester.
Well, you're talking about one of the finest.
Love that type of.
You're talking about one of the finest characters ever in pop culture, Rochester.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
I just, John, your online chat room name is Step and Fetch It, so I don't get
that's out of respect, though. Come on,
this
man.
liberal wokeism you're all of a sudden.
I'm virtue signaling.
Cool,
it's just everything's a product of its time, and it's a bummer. And I think the inclusion of the knock inclusion is certainly an option. I'm not gonna.
It's an option.
I'm not gonna get on him about not including.
No.
Ebony,
Even me, Mr. Source Material Man, sits there going like, yeah, that's something you can do. Is just not include Ebony, and there you go.
It's an option, yeah.
But even turning Dan Lauria's Frank Miller.
Dolan, I was wondering if you were gonna bring this up.
Well, here's the thing: is that it's so not the character. Dan Lauria is great. Always is.
Wonderful.
Love to see him.
Love him.
And him in period clothes with the hat, rumpled trench coat. It's all great.
Born for it. Yeah.
And he's sitting there, but he's been turned into a cartoony, this guy gets on my nerves. And you go, okay, Commissioner Dolan is they do have him have a pipe in one scene. I was like, oh, there you go. Dolan is drawn completely differently, and his relationship with Denny Colt is almost father and son. It's like it's a much more warm thing. And in this, he's constantly bitching and bawling and like, stay away from my daughter.
He's a combination of that character in Batman and Pat Chambers from Mike Hammer. I mean, that's obvious what Miller's drawing from is.
Yeah.
Who's the slobby cop in Batman?
Bullock. Yeah.
Harvey Bullock.
So he's a combination of Bullock and Pat Chambers.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
he is
and that all adds to
Bullock
once again this
thing.
idea about like I'm gonna rebuild this thing in my image, right? That's sort of the thing.
Right.
It's just like Frank Miller does a rewrite on the Spirit, and my Dolan is this guy, and I like that guy. Like I said, I mean, I love Dan Lauria and him. By the way, Dan Lauria as Bullock, that'd be great. I would love that. He would have been
back
great.
in the day. Absolutely.
He
would have been a perfect choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Had they done Bullock, of course they do kind of do Bullock in the Burton movie.
In the first
DC, DC. One of the things I do love is DC.
Except for he's really dirty, and Bullock was always very gray area.
That was why the DC wouldn't let him call him Bullock. They changed it from the script. Same thing in Dark Knight.
Oh, so that was okay.
Same thing in Dark Knight. Nolan wrote that Montoya was dirty, and they were like, "No, you can't. You're not allowed to do that."
I like that. I like them protecting those characters.
They are very protective of those. So they're like, nope.
Does anyone really care? They're just side characters. Yeah, we care.
Nope, you can't have
the
that.
Side characters.
Because there's that.
We got to sell these comics long after your movie gets released.
In Dark Knight, there is the Latina cop who sells out Harvey Dent, and it was in the script. It was Montoya, and they were like, "You have to change that. You can't."
Let's not forget, he also made Dr. Leslie Thompson a coke dealer, and I was like, "What? No, Dr. Leslie Thompson."
She said,
no!
"She said, here's a little something for the pain."
Yeah.
By the way, Dr. Leslie Tompkins, Brendan.
Tompkins, thank you. Sorry.
I know. Wow. I only say that. I'm not normally that harsh, except with Brendan because he would give it back to me. That's the thing.
Yeah, it'll come back, and I stumble on these things all the time, Mr. Experty Man.
Next time when you read that name, huh?
I'm going to hit you in the face.
Yeah. Expects it slip from his head. The Spirit though. Yes. Well, also the Converse. So fucking. Frank Miller,
man, I can't believe Brendan didn't bring this up. That's all I thought as I was watching.
If I could go from thing to thing,
I don't remember tennis shoes. What?
No tennis shoes.
I wouldn't
also,
have a problem
why
with
isn't his shirt white? Why? Because the shirt's always white, red tie, blue.
The black. I will say the black shirt.
Superman colors.
The black shirt makes sense in the context of in this art style. The black shirt I think does make sense because it makes the red read more. But I'm not, but that's downward from, you know, I mean, that descended
because
you've
the
chosen
technique they're using to isolate and just computer replace a color, which I think I kind of know how the tech works. They could have technically done for the entire suit. Literally, he could have been a shape in blue with a white shirt and a red tie flapping around. Yeah. They could have done that. But totally I think he was still just in love with, this is the way I'm doing my comics right now. Because while he's doing this, he is still working on Sin City Comics. Yeah. And he became enamored of black and white and one color. That was his whole thing. So anytime this movie decides to do a desaturated, which it does, I mean, this movie isn't just black and white. Nope. It will do desaturated sequences. And of course, when you've got like the Japanese flag behind the octopus is bright red, and when you got the Nazi set up and you're like, oh boy, Frank, what are you working on here? What are you working out?
All of it is very striking, but it doesn't make a lot of sense.
No,
but it's
and
all
every
like, wow.
single. By the way, it's just it's all just Frank doing Frank.
Yeah,
because every single side character name is a comic creator or comics person. Ditko's Speedy Delivery is on the band,
which in a different movie. I mean, I'm not.
And Donenfeld, and
I'm not against that inherently.
Leibowitz.
Like you could.
No,
do
I'm
that
not against that. It's just. Also
it compounds, right? It's the thing about, like, if he was exactly the Spirit but he wore Converse and that was his little signature, I could be okay with that. But
if it was exactly the Spirit,
that's what I'm saying.
Converse,
but the Converse are just like, oh, that's the little Frank Miller note on it. That would be fine. But it's like, no, it's all that. That's the thing about it is I'm not. He just made this decision, this decision, and all of it compounds into this movie that's like, wow. Like I said, or like individual moments in the movie, I'm like, what cool, striking images. And then you're like, I don't know what this is doing for the plot or the characters, but that's a really cool image.
Take on Colt being beaten up all the time and somehow surviving all these, concussions and things. And it's like, well, he can't be killed. What?
Yeah.
Well, he
heals. He has a healing factor. I mean, literally has
That's obviously the
And by the way,
thing
I love Frank working in this stuff too, with like the joke about Robin. Oh, famously, he worked on Batman and Robin. And then later on, the Electra Complex. What is that? Electra Complex. And they do it 5 times in the same scene. What is that? It's like the Oedipus Complex, but for girls. Electra Complex. Right. Frank Miller, we know you created Electra. Shut the fuck up.
I did shout out at the screen. When I saw it in the theater, I said, he created Electra. No.
I like Stana Katic's character. I don't know how you pronounce her name.
She's great in this.
I think she's
actually, I have
highlight.
more respect for Stana Katic now because I loved her weird, nerdy.
Yes,
she's
the hero worshipping
kind of take
once again
for this character,
and also she's able to say stuff like, "Golly, da da da." I mean, there are times when he's leaning. Gee whiz.
She's in the movie I want to see. Like I'm going. There are moments where you're like, I think she's in the movie you want to see. I think Mocked is often in the movie, and any scene with him and Sarah Paulson, I'm like, yes. That's great. I remember in the trailer
because it's close to the tone that
when he's walking,
someone familiar with the Spirit would be expecting.
When he's walking shirtless through the hall, I remember in the trailer, and he's going, "And get me a tie, and it sure as hell better be red." And I just remember like, yeah. That's the stuff that maybe because so that's the thing.
And you're like, Frank, I want to thank you for 2.5 minutes of some of the finest cinema I've seen.
Well, that's it's
all the good stuff compacted.
That's the thing. This movie's more
8 minutes.
This movie's more
a quick montage of amazing graphic design and stuff.
It's that
here's something that's very hokey, but worked for me. And it's probably something that Eisner might have kind of done. But the idea of a personification of death, Lorelei, basically saying like, I'm going to claim you. He's like, you belong to me, and he's like, not yet. I got too much to do.
Very fun.
That kind of stuff is great. I really liked it. I mean, in concept, and then the way he did it with the underwater stuff, it's like, wow, that's gorgeous.
And this whole idea of
there's plenty of gorgeous in this movie.
Yeah, where it's like all these women trying to possess him, and death being the ultimate one that's trying to do it. Great. That actually worked. That's one of the things in the writing of this script that actually does
Plaster
work.
of Paris.
Yeah,
Plaster of Paris.
I mean, and she's also on board. She's doing a cartoon, and it's working.
Yeah.
And she's saying her own name and just walking off going, but I am Plaster of Paris.
Right. That's very Eisner. Yeah.
So there are these little moments.
There are moments, and that's why this movie. That's why it's frustrating.
Totally
that's the thing, is why it's frustrating. You can't. It's not just like, well, that thing was a complete miss. There are things in here where you're like, if you did, and you had the right idea.
It does not deserve to be on the what is it, Empire magazine? Top 100 worst movies of all time.
That's
and it's
insane.
Like number 34 or
something.
That's and I'm like,
that's just insane.
I'm sorry, I've seen Frankenstein Island.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you have to be. Well, I've
seen Batman and Robin. Okay,
Batman.
If you want to go up in budget,
to walk out.
That's the thing. Even if you go into Steel is worse than this. That Captain America with Salinger's kid is worse. That's the thing.
Yes.
I do think when you get this is a big thing. When you get into worst movies, it can't look this good. You know what I mean? Like, it can't be this striking. You need to, when you get into like the 50 worst movies, you've got to be failing at some technical levels much more than this is.
Right.
Because that is where this movie
I didn't see a single boom mic. The sound came through nice and clear.
That's the thing, where you do start to go, well, this movie is shot by Bill Pope, who is one of my favorite cinematographers, who is Sam Raimi's prime go-to cinematographer. Has now become Edgar Wright's prime go-to cinematographer, but also shot
Speaking of two filmmakers who could have killed this.
Oh my God! Could have destroyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, he shot all the Matrix movies, and of course, with Raimi, previously shot on our patron feed, Darkman. He shot a favorite of ours, Brandon, Zero Effect.
I love it.
We love Zero Effect.
Oh man,
Zero Effect.
Love that movie.
Great movie.
Me too.
Great movie.
That movie.
Jake Kasdan existed for one reason, and that reason was to make Zero Effect.
Oh, Jake Kasdan has done a lot of good.
One thing.
He's done a lot of good stuff.
Is he the one directing Thunderbolts?
No,
different chick. All right.
Okay.
Anyway,
I'll give another shout out to a sweet moment in this movie.
Yeah.
There are things, like I said, I am.
Well, I said that's why I say, like, my mild defense is just like, it can't be fully written off. That's my mildest defense.
It can't.
The
scene where the spirit is running onto the street, and a guy steals the purse, and he just punches the guy, catches the purse in midair, and then immediately hands it back to the lady without missing a step.
Right.
That is some Edgar Wright choreography right there. That is some
and that is great. That is another like
Driver,
that's the movie I want. Please, that movie.
Absolutely. And then you have reporters that are just there. So in one in an uninterrupted take, people are going, "Hey, blah 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 blah," and he's just responding, but it's like, "I have things to do. I'm sorry." I'm like, that's good.
I kind of like that. I do think he does get a lot right about how the spirit functions in the world, like the way people react to him. The
he
press.
is their only mass crime fighter, and when he ends up in the hospital, no one takes his mask off. I think it's very respectful, very nice. It reminds me of Batman comics, where you would have him end up in a Gotham Central, and he's like laid out, and the doctor's like going, "No, don't touch his mask, out of respect." And he's like, he took a couple bullets to the chest, but don't take that mask off. No.
I mean, it's one of my favorite moments in Spider-Man 2 when they put the mask back on him, the New Yorkers.
That breaks my heart.
It's one of the best.
And Spider-Man 2 is one of the greatest superhero movies.
And that is the best. I think that is the best scene in one of the best superhero movies.
I know.
I love that scene and that movie. Yes. That movie is everything, obviously.
All right, you want to hear my hot take on the whole movie?
Hot take on. Okay, here we go. Yeah, the patented. We need a sting for that. We need a theme for Robin's hot take
theme. Yeah, we need that.
Classic hot take for me.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Yeah. I'm ready.
All right. This movie is to, let's say, if Frank Miller had made a lot of movies.
Yes.
Because this is it. To this point, this is still the last solo effort from him.
Right.
Yeah.
This movie is to Frank Miller's oeuvre. the way that Beyond Therapy is to Robert Altman's oeuvre.
Oh, wow.
Fair.
In that, I literally am sitting there the whole time going, they let him do it. They let him do it. It's 100% him. It's 100%.
He did.
And the thing I love about Altman, and I defend Altman till the day I die, is that guy, win, lose, or draw, 100%.
Oh,
it is never not.
Yes.
Even the Grisham movie is 100% what he wanted.
Yeah,
it's true.
So,
and that Grisham movie is totally watchable. Totally
you have
watchable.
to respect it to a degree. We've been kind of dancing around this, especially when we're talking about the studio. It is 100% what he wanted to do. It is a Jodorowsky Hail Mary. I don't understand sports,
I do respect it for that reason.
I feel like
because he is uncompromised.
He's going down swinging. He's going down swinging big time. And I have more respect. I will say, it is a thing about, would we, I don't know. Yeah, would I rather have something that's aesthetically closer but less interesting? I don't know. That's the thing. Like,
but the problem is that you don't know clearly that you wouldn't have loved somebody else's take.
Oh, no. I might have loved somebody else's take, but I'm saying, would I rather, but at least this is a guy passionate about making this film. I don't know that I would have liked a total gun for hire, just like, it's the spirit. At least this movie is made with a passion. It may be misplaced, and in a lot of places it definitely is.
100% misplaced.
Yeah, but it's definitely not a checked out dude by any stretch of imagination.
Yeah, I find that even discovering things in this film, like I hadn't remembered Stanicatic at all.
Right.
What a
I'm
bright
enjoying
spot in this movie.
Yeah. I actually think Christina Aguilera's cover of "Falling in Love Again" over the credits is actually pretty good.
Because
I forgot that
in that case it's not 100% Christina Aguilera because she doesn't do the
She the opposite of Frank Miller. She leans away from her worst impulses there.
Right. So,
she actually does a respectful.
She can sing if she stops warbling.
I think it's a good choice as a song in a Spirit movie. But having said all that, it's not a movie I particularly would ever want to see again. Because it's just so 100% not what I enjoy or like.
And it is very cringe a lot of the time.
There's a lot of moments that are like, ooh,
including a lot of that monologuing. It's just like, pull it back. One thing, it doesn't fit the character, but beyond that, it's not making this movie move.
We keep bringing up Spillane as a reference point, but I would swear Frank Miller, dropped acid and read every book by Jim Thompson and then made the Spirit.
Because
all of that interior monologuing is just
that is the weirdest
stuff that I loved in my 20s. I loved reading those Jim Thompson books.
That is the weird,
God damn,
the weird swing away from Eisner you're talking about is the idea of the Spirit as a hard-boiled character. Even though he exists
he should have made Slam Bradley the movie. That would have worked with a lot.
We're talking about the moments. Actually, if Frank Miller directed Slam Bradley movie, would probably.
He could have also done John Law, which was the original version of the Spirit before the mask went on. He could have just done John Law the movie, and it's like, that's my Will Eisner tribute. Great.
There you go.
Or the first run of Dick Tracy comic strips was much more hard boiled.
I do think I have been thinking that. I mean, not that you could. I mean, I would love to see something in the vein of Dick Tracy, but the idea of either Bruce Timm talked about it or Brad Bird talked about the idea of something that carries the style of Eisner as an animated piece would really be pretty cool.
I would also pitch instead
and you could
of a
really
movie,
lean into the colors.
Doing an episodic show.
Yeah, I was thinking the
because
same
then
time.
You could do those great
short story
Spirit.
Yeah.
Well, a short story, and also the spirit.
Yeah. The title.
Ways that Eisner worked the spirit into the opening panels.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of the way he would play with that.
It's built from the ground up to be short. Even like when, I mean, look, I keep bringing up the Darwin Cook run because I love it. Yeah. But even the Darwin Cook run, he did single issue. They were 22
because
pages,
he was doing Eisner.
Beginning to end stories.
Yeah, short stories, and then the third season of the animated series would have been where he goes to the moon, and they
Wally-Wood,
try to capture that Wally-Wood shading. That would be amazing.
Oh my God, that's my thing about Eisner set such a high bar that by the time Wally-Wood gets there, the only thing you can do is send him to the moon.
Yeah.
Send him to the moon.
But of course, I mean, look at the machinery. That anytime Wally-Wood would draw the inside of a rocket ship or something, it's just like,
yeah.
Lord, I'm sorry, I'm a huge fan. Huge fan of both dudes, but man, Wally-Wood. Anyway.
Yeah, Wally-Wood's great. You're not going to get any pushback.
Yeah, when are we getting our Thunder?
There's more to Wally-Wood than Little Annie Fanny. Let me tell you something.
Well, I do think we've talked about this across the board in this season. This is another financial failure that, regardless of this, I'm sure they'll just chalk up to. They don't like those old timey characters.
I think that is the truth. Yeah. They always will. Yeah, it doesn't. It's never. It's not the movie's fault.
Yeah. And we'll see that again and again and again throughout the rest of this season.
People just don't like it.
And maybe that's true, but like there's often that's not the lesson to learn from this movie by any stretch of imagination. Because this movie was never gonna. It's just too weird. Even the Sin City. Well, look at when they tried to do Sin City again. Nobody went to that second one, which is also bad. But it's sort of like the novelty of that was a real one-off. I remember when that came out, it did really well because people were just like, ooh, what is this? This is interesting. I don't think anyone left that going, I need 8 more of these.
Sin City was a great showcase for what Robert Rodriguez could do within that little studio.
Yeah.
Where he makes these entire worlds and is able to fill it with a lot of, again... The problem with Sin City is Robert Rodriguez's editor, which is Robert Rodriguez, left the room. But you watch the Spy Kids movies and you're seeing, what can really be done. And Sin City was another version of that.
Well, it's interesting, actually. I think something that he did successfully was Bill Pope, who shot this, also shot Alita Battle Angel with him, which I think was a very fun movie.
I really loved it, and I really want a sequel.
Yeah, but that's where he's taking that. Rodriguez, though, likes to experiment, right, and then move on to the next thing and try the next thing. Whereas Frank Miller, as you're saying, it's just like, oh, I maybe this is the next chapter of my career. Is I just keep making these.
Yeah. These kinds of things.
Yeah, because I don't. No, I have a feeling
Frank Miller.
He
do not make more of these.
Maybe, as I said, maybe just movies aren't his medium. It's just not his thing. There's that new documentary out about him that I do want to see that just came out. There's a new Frank Miller documentary that I'm very curious about.
Is it called Frank Miller? What happened?
No, question mark. It's got a more grandiose title, as you might expect. Oh yeah, it's called Frank Miller, American Genius. Okay, there we go.
Wow,
are you kidding me?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he is.
Oh my God!
I mean that's not inaccurate. Whether or not he, like a lot of artists, the later years but I mean, there's a period of time when the guy was an American genius.
Well, here's the thing about genius and greatness and that kind of thing. This is another Bogdanovich story. I hope you're ready.
Another guy who kind of petered out in his later years.
But It's a
petered.
Great
I see what you did there.
Hey, I'd say he flatted himself out of
bad lady. Sorry. Anyway.
But anyway, no. Peter Bogdanovich is quoting a story about talking to Orson Welles as an introduction to one of the Sturgis Criterion discs.
Yes.
And he says that he was talking to Orson Welles and bemoaning the fate of Preston Sturges, where he says to Welles, "Oh, Sturges is so great. He made 7 just incredible classics of screwball comedy.
Yes.
Nuts to just."
Agreed.
Soup to Nuts, great.
Amazing.
And then he just, all of a sudden, his quality just drops off 1,000%. He can't seem to ever get it back. And Wells is just listening to him patiently, and he finally goes, "Well, Peter, you know, you only need to make really one great movie."
I mean, that's
and then Bogdanovich gets what Wells is saying and immediately changes the subject.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true though.
Miller had a great run as a genius rethinking of a lot of what he attacked,
an almost unmatchable run in some ways, right? Like the same thing with Moore.
And then also his way of bringing in hard-boiled crime into original work.
I don't like to say he's a one-trick pony, but he's a one-trick pony.
Well,
but he
fully explored that trick.
But it's sort of
he fully explored it. To the point
I've read
of
all of Sin City. I've read all the ones up to the end, and it is another thing where you can see, and this is bold, but I'm doing what a critic does, unfortunately. Basically, you can see the quality drop off, and also the self-parody where it becomes more of the same, and you go, okay, we get it.
So
that is not a unique.
Dark Knight Strikes Again, or whatever that nonsense was.
It was Strikes Again, yeah.
You flip through the pages and you can isolate panels that you like, but
and
overall,
an idea maybe
an idea,
yeah.
But overall, you're just looking at somebody just going.
Unfortunately, that happens to a lot of creators.
That's what I was just going to say. Is the idea that's not a unique problem to Frank?
No, it's not unique to Frank Miller.
I mean,
no, and you can look at. Although I defend Immortal Story and F for Fake as being my favorite Wells movies now, but you look at The Other Side of the Wind, and it doesn't all land.
Hold on, wait a minute. I'm sorry. We're just going to whip past that statement from Robin. That's the hottest take you've ever said on the show. Those are the best.
Other Side of the Wind. It's interesting. That's all it's got.
No. I'm going back to the F for Fake one.
F for Fake is, oh my God.
I
could watch that movie until I die. I love it so much.
I love it, but you're talking about that's better than Citizen Kane or Touch of Evil?
Yeah.
Wow.
I can
I don't want to derail this podcast.
I love Touch of Evil.
Guys,
I love Lady from Shanghai.
Wow.
I love Magnificent Ambersons.
Guys,
F for Fake and Immortal Story.
We've gone far afield. And my stomach screams.
Yeah.
My stomach screams.
Yeah.
So in other words, let's pull it back from Orson Welles and Peter Bogdanovich and come back to The Spirit.
The Spirit,
which isn't a good movie, but it has good things in it.
American Genius could be in a title about a documentary on Frank Miller. However, I would put a question mark after the word.
What about Frank Miller acting genius? We haven't talked about Frank Miller has more than
really good.
More than just a cameo. He's fine, but it's more than a cameo. It's a little bit. It's approaching supporting role in this movie.
And he gets it
but to me, the perfect way he buttons that whole thing is to have his head chopped off.
Yeah. And no one was
next to Spirit, and the only thing he missed was the Spirit talking to the head before realizing it's just a head, and that's why the guys respond.
The octopus is a criminal genius, but he's wrong about one thing, where he goes, toilets are always funny.
No, he's not.
I didn't laugh. I wasn't laughing, so I'm like, excuse me, Mr. Octopus, sir. I know what you're going for.
I'll give him absurd. It was absurd, but I'm not sure I laughed in terms of funny. It was.
I will say when he goes, that's just damn weird, and he says that 18 times. He's right.
Yeah,
a little head on a foot hopping around. Thank God that was included.
Anyway, I kept wondering if Robert Rodriguez had dropped in for just a second to do a little spy
cat exploding and only two very fake eyes. Okay, let's just let's wrap this up.
You hear the sound effect of the Gucci sphere hitting the drain. I mean, to me, that was.
Hey, Robin, never say Gucci sphere again, okay? Never.
Gucci sphere. Gucci sphere.
Gucci sphere.
Like when I asked for a Gucci sphere in Italy, but I had to use my accent. Yeah, it was Gucci sphere.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. So let's wrap it up.
You want to talk about some highs and lows here, folks?
Highs and lows.
Highs and Lows. Yeah, we're going to read a High and Lowest comic. We're going to
That
explain
lady,
it to
that lady.
They get up to so much, the high and the low.
The high and the low. We like the high, but we also got to get a low. Oof.
Let's not forget this movie, by the way. Came out, I don't think on Christmas, but it was Christmas season, which was also kind of a weird choice.
Oh my God.
Also kind of a strange choice. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
All right. This is surprise, surprise, a bit of a long one, but here we go. But this comes to us.
Okay, I'm sorry. I need to take a werewolf break right now.
All
right.
Okay, wow. This is our first during highs and lows. All right. Okay, so we're back from the werewolf break and ready to dive into some highs and lows here. This comes to us from IMDb user Moon Monday, who titles their review "A Train Wreck and a Travesty." As
a train wreck and a travesty?
A train wreck and a travesty. That is the title of this review. I will say
that's one of my favorite Johnny Cash albums.
Train wreck and a travesty.
Train wreck and a travesty.
Yeah. And that's the day that the skeletons came to life. Sorry.
One of the best ever.
Where's that from?
I will say that while I agree with a lot of what is said in this review, I do not like the tone, and I think you'll know why immediately. As an informed analyst of sequential art, which includes comics.
Yeah, right off the bat.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Wow.
Which, by the way,
I want to leave the comic book store. I am overhearing this conversation.
Yeah.
Just hold my. I'll pick those up later. Thank you.
I'll pick those up later. Put them in my box, okay?
You've got to love this though, because the key is, as an informed analyst of sequential art, which includes comics, but other things as well. It's not just
good.
Wow. It's broader than that. I imagine. I'll give it the tone I think it deserves, which is, I would be very remiss in my studies if I had not read at least the spirit of Eisner's works.
Who invited Moon to our party, Brendan? Because I told you not to invite him.
But he's got some really good ideas. Anyway, keep going.
Guys, this is a long one, so choose wisely where you interrupt. Surprise, surprise, this person goes on. I would be remiss in my studies if I had not at least read the spirit of Eisner's works. However, unlike some fans, I don't insist that it is a flawless masterpiece or that only the original creator can do the story justice. There are plenty of people out there that could compose a worthy homage to this iconic and well-loved series and character. This is John's addendum, like Darwin Cook. All right. Frank Miller is not one of them.
God.
Barely passable as a comic creator, he is tolerable chiefly only when doing original. I don't agree with that. Not attempting to corrupt the inventions of other, better authors. This is made so palpable by the puerile, amateurish, and awkward scripting and stilted direction for the film version of The Spirit. Part of what made let's skip too far. Part of what made the original comic so great was its beautifully rendered panels, which evoked a kind of cinematic framing. Eisner's spirit was very three-dimensional and tangible. It was easy to grasp. His characters were neither oversimplified nor overcomplicated. They were merely people interacting in the situations that occurred. Miller's spirit, on the other hand, is flat and two-dimensional. Even in its blocking, many scenes have characters pacing in straight lines, back and forth, or tracing directly linear paths in the background, which makes it seem like a shooting gallery at a carnival, and certainly does not indicate the depths of an actual three-dimensional space. It seems a step backwards, in fact, from the deep and realistic dimensions of Eisner's original to Miller's inexplicably flattened world. Basically, this is just Sin City with the names of the spirit characters and some vague external resemblance to them. It's clear Miller has never read a single spirit story and has no idea who the characters are, and this is especially evident in the fact that he rips off several shots directly from covers of later magazines, which is obviously where he stopped in his investigation of the story. Immediately, we have the spirit himself indulging in pretentious self-narrative, something he doesn't do. The octopus showing his face openly, something he doesn't do, and Commissioner Dolan resenting the spirit's presence, something he doesn't do. It doesn't improve from there, with each character demonstrating only the slightest of resemblances to the actual comic character. As usual, by the way, all of that is, there's a lot of valid criticism in there, but I want to push back on all of it because I just hate the way they're saying it, right? Yeah.
John, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Was all of that one sentence?
It should be, right? Yeah.
It feels like it.
Hold on.
Yeah, it does.
Hold on, folks. There's more row to hoe here. As usual, Miller's homophobia is on display here. And as usual, his obsession with prostitutes makes its way not only the plot, but also the narrative, more times than really are necessary or welcome. Did you guys notice that? I didn't.
No, it was just the girls in the elevator. That was all I
yeah.
thought.
Also, where was the homophobia? I mean, maybe I'm not.
The homophobia. I don't.
Yeah, I don't.
I didn't.
Know
I'm not saying it's not there.
You know what? To his point, I can make that case, but it's in other works of his. It's
I'm not saying it's not in Frank Miller, but I'm talking this movie specifically.
His obsession with and I'm all for representation, but his obsession with I'm forcing to let's go back to World War II trauma, and here's fascist imagery. Yeah. And I like that Morgenstern, she's got a Star of David when she's walking around, that Stan Akadic's character. And they have that little, she's like, Altacocker, and he's like, he's a futzy old man, and all right, yes, I get it. But really, most of his obsessions that he includes are just that kind of self-conscious narration and ladies. But they're not.
Aside
and they're
from
not prostitutes,
sex
but he
workers.
certainly does have every one of the characters except for Ellen really on display.
But that's
really on display.
Well, maybe, but that's not inconsistent with the femme fatales of Eisner. I mean, certainly the era he was creating in, it wasn't as sexual because of just but that's part of the story. So anyway, I'll keep going. I know you guys are enjoying this. So his fixation on graphic violence is also inconsistent with the original Spirit Tales.
Well, that's true.
And the actions in the they're violent. They're not graphically violent. But it is surprising.
Silhouette, which was nicely done, but the silhouette of the guy's head blown out the back of it, I was like, that's an awesome shot.
Yeah.
Eisner himself would have thrown up. But still, awesome shot.
And the actions in the first 10 minutes alone completely fly in the face of the source material. This is where I really disagree. The acting is atrocious as well, which is surprising considering the level of talent of most of the cast. From the first character, we see a pretentious and obnoxious embodiment of death. The acting is strictly bottom of the barrel. Shouldn't death be slightly jarring or imposing and not have all the gravitas and pathos of a preschool holiday pageant? It doesn't improve at all from there, with each and every subsequent character worse than the previous. All of the actors involved in this production come off as if they were under the impression that the final film scene was just a casual take, and a joke at that. In several scenes, the actors involved seem to be openly and obviously intoxicated. That's fine if you're good enough to pull it off, Michael.
Jesus Christ.
That's fine if you're good enough to pull it off. Michael Caine in Jaws: The Revenge comes to mind as doing a surprisingly good job acting despite being clearly drunk out of his mind. But nobody in this cast is. Samuel L. Jackson should be good, but he's horrifyingly bad here. And it seems that of the ridiculous snakes on a plane, he can only give a token effort. The only actor in this who does an even passable job is Arthur the Cat. And if I were him, I'd be looking for another agent. Wow. The flashback with the jarringly modernistic teenagers, no better actors than their elders, I might add, attempting to look retro, shattered any last vestiges of the setting. Miller saw fit to condense the flashback into an unnatural mass of interactions that demolished any hope of sympathy for the characters, especially with our young Denny Colt seeming more concerned that Sans Serif didn't enjoy life in poverty in their disgusting urban hole than the fact that she only just found out that her father had been killed. It's always breathtaking to see how needlessly overcomplicated the script was in this, when in the original it was usually just as simple as the spirit solves a mystery and fights some bad guys.
Yeah.
That's true, but also those are 8-page comics. This is a movie. Not to defend the script in general, but it's going to have to get more complicated.
Yeah.
With liberal doses of humor and some usually well-aimed social commentary. Ellen Dolan wasn't a crabby doctor and didn't need to be. The Spirit wasn't really seriously interested in settling down with any of his femme fatales and didn't need to be. And the comics weren't even close to Sin City with the inane, sketchy red garbage to stand out against black and white and didn't need to be. To boot... Eisner was always head and shoulders above the man who was barely a low-rent substitute for Hugo Pratt.
Jesus.
Well, last paragraph.
Wow.
Fellas. Here we go. Last paragraph.
Last paragraph?
Yeah.
Okay.
While the Spirit himself doesn't fare much better in comic form, given over into the hands of talentless idiots like Mark Evanier, such a widely exposed release as this film should have been far better.
My God.
Yeah, I think the Evanier slam was unnecessary, but
wow.
There's no excuse for the bad writing and direction, hideous acting, and terrible visuals that make up this train wreck of a film. It's so bad, it's literally laughable. Please don't spend your money on this, whether you're a fan of the Spirit or not. It's not worth it if you're a fan, and nobody else would be able to wade through the gallons of raw film sewage to pick out the few commonalities with its origin. 1 out of 10 stars.
John, can I say
Yes.
that until now, I hadn't realized what had happened to the bastard adopted son of Rex Reed and John Simon. But here...
We found him! Yeah, I know.
That's why I started laughing halfway through. I was just like, gee, what does this remind me? Rex Reed and John Simon.
Yep.
Two of the bitchiest, most negative film critics I've ever read in my life.
Once again where it's like, there's validity to a lot of those criticisms, but number one, hyperbolic, way overblown.
Yes.
Yeah. Because the idea that
it just reads like a run-on sentence.
Yeah.
It's not.
And it's also just at every turn trying to show how educated and thoughtful I am about all my.
Yeah.
And yet, this educated and thoughtful guy is slamming Frank Miller for not having read The Spirit.
Yeah.
This man who has studied graphic literature isn't aware of Eisner Miller, the book.
I said there's no sequential art and or comics history class that is not required reading in. I guarantee you. That is one of the important texts
aren't written on for grades within that class.
Yeah. Also, I like that he starts by saying I don't even like The Spirit. He starts with, he goes, I don't even really care I don't think the book is that great.
I think that he, I mean, Frank Miller is not unfamiliar. That's not the problem. I bet he's read every single Eisner Spirit.
Yeah, no.
The problem is that
that's an insane statement.
Put his stamp. He just wanted to put his stamp.
Yeah, he's just the wrong guy for it. I don't think he fundamentally just doesn't know the material. We know you read Eisner Miller, and while they are radically different, his reverence for the man is very clear.
Yeah.
Because as it should be for everyone.
You don't watch a Truffaut film for the Hitchcock references because he doesn't do them that well. You know, but at the same time, you can read Truffaut Hitchcock and see someone who really loved and appreciated the film.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is it's not that they are slavish imitators. They have learned lessons from these people, but they're not just trying to be those people.
So
Godard is a huge Howard Hawks fan. I defy you to find any Howard Hawks stuff in Godard films.
Yeah, I know. It's always an interesting thing. So looking through the highs, there's an interesting mix of reviews here. I won't read the long thing, but do yourselves a favor if you're interested. There's somebody wrote basically an essay about how this movie is inherently about a guy trying to become God, which is the octopus, and this really interesting mythological thing that they've really defended the movie in a bizarre way. I'm glad that they got that depth from it. Anyway, but let's okay, I'll read. Here's the one I'll read.
Is this one 5 pages?
This one's a lot shorter.
Okay,
good.
Yeah. Okay. This comes from K Miller VR. I don't know. Who titles quite a bit different reaction here with just from the title. Finally, a true comic book translation to the screen. I was afraid to almost see the movie because of all the hype and advertising they did. Too many movies have been ruined for me because of hype. They just end up being a letdown. However, The Spirit did not disappoint. It actually exceeded my expectations. Frank Miller, being a comic man in his soul, does a great job of putting that compassion to his art onto the screen. Visually amazing, and it kills me when people say there was no pacing or the timing was awful. Have you ever read a comic book? The dialogue isn't read that way because of Miller's inexperience. It's because he wanted it that way. That is how a comic book reads. Short and choppy, and points with boisterous outbursts and profound lines. Don't criticize something just because you don't understand it. Along those same lines, many people have been complaining about the juxtaposition of the theme, that it's trying to be funny and dark at the same time. I am just going to say it's safe to assume that none of these people have actually read the original comic book, because that is basically the whole point of The Spirit. He is an almost melancholy character in a chaotic city that is turned to all but jokes and fun, suggesting a separation between him and the living world. Comic book fans will love this movie, by far the best comic book adaptation of this recent comic movie trend. Miller stays true to what he feels passionate about and true to his late friend's comic. Well done. Bravo. 10 out of 10 stars.
Wow.
Wow.
I would also ask if they've actually read the comic books.
Well, the thing is, there's a piece of something I kind of agree with, which is there is a juxtaposition of tones in The Spirit. However, that is because when you're, once again, they're 8-page stories. Some are funnier, some are darker. There's a natural sort of, when the movie is violently shifting tones mid-scene, that's not the same thing as this is kind of a lighter Spirit story.
No, this is amateurishly done as a director. Yes. And also, as we've said,
one of the big tone is a huge problem here.
Yeah, tone is a huge problem. Yeah, that is the sign of a guy who hasn't directed a film before,
I agree,
but is an amazing visual artist.
I agree. You can make a movie that has darkness and comedy in it. He just doesn't mesh them very well here.
And I would also say maybe The Spirit's not the best.
Well, I actually don't agree with that, because the comic is full of slapstick, broad comedy, and dark crime stories at the same time. I think a show, as you were saying, Robin, I think
but not darkness.
No. It's a Miller kind of darkness. But I'm saying it's not hard boiled. It's not that kind of grit. But you can take the crime stuff seriously and have slapstick stuff in it. And I think actually
Eisner did, as we've said repeatedly, short stories, and some of those stories were sad or melancholy or featured a different, like a low-life character who does not come to a good end at the end, and
that's
that
why
kind
I think
of thing.
A guy who definitely cites Eisner as a huge influence is Bruce Timm, and I think Batman the Animated Series does that really well. There are lighter episodes.
It's probably why the first Clock King episode is probably one of my favorite episodes of anything I've ever seen.
It's a good mashup, because what they did, all the folks involved in the animated series,
Paul Dini,
what they did was they treated each story as its own, and they did shift POV all the time. It wasn't Bruce Wayne gets up in the morning, goes fights crime, and comes back. Right. Talking. Sometimes the viewpoint was of like the guy that the Joker abducts in that episode.
Joker, the Ed Begley character.
That's just a guy. Then it might be another episode might be a henchman to this person is the focal point. But then you do get episodes that are fully Wayne centric. And then you get Poison Ivy for an episode, and you're like, oh, now we know a lot more about her.
And the whole
That's
Harley
just
and
good
Ivy
storytelling.
That I think that approach that's what I would really hope for. I would love to see
a Spirit TV show,
an animated streaming Spirit series that can go all the places the comic does. Because just in general, while he's off the mark in a lot of places, I don't know that a movie in general could contain all the aspects of the Spirit, because it's so broad and fast. I mean, you could make a good Spirit movie. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, like, if you really want to capture
one story,
the Spirit and all its greatness, the idea of doing short stories is kind of inherently what it is.
I think it'd be smart to do it as 2 stories, but blend them so well that no one catches on that's what you did. Sure. I think you would have an origin type thing, because again, he is a character that may need some explanation, even though it's not so difficult a story to get.
Miller overcomplicates it with all the supernatural stuff, and the comic is just the guy seemed dead, and he lets people think he's still dead.
Yeah, that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, just real quick, I didn't talk about this. $60 million budget for this movie. That's a lot. It's not obviously like gigantic, but it's a lot. $39 million worldwide gross. So not great. And
my bank account screams.
As we've talked about, Frank Miller has not directed a film since, at least not on his own.
No,
it put him in director jail. Maybe he won't be coming back.
I would be curious if he even has any inkling to want to come back. I mean, like, I don't know that that's. I think that might be a mutual.
He doesn't push for a film adaptation of Holy Terror. Anyway,
so there's
there's
the Spirit.
That's it for the Spirit. There it is, and I don't recommend watching it. I do recommend you guys check out like a flip book or stills. There you go. That'll be nice.
Yeah. I can't in good conscience recommend the movie, but I do think it's interesting. It's an interesting movie that if you're curious, there's stuff there's stuff in here. But no, I can't say you got to
read the original work, and I would recommend, as I often do to anybody who asks me what my favorite book is, Michael Chabon's The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay.
Of course,
such a great book.
One of the greatest books I've ever read.
And big
Pulitzer Prize winner, and
again,
Will Eisner has an appearance in it with Orson Welles.
And once again, big shock, because I've been saying the whole time, I do highly recommend the Darwin Cook, because I think it distills a lot of the character in a way that is going to feel familiar to modern comics readers, and then you can probably go back. Because I understand
I recommend just reading Eisner, and then get up to Darwin Cook.
Brendan,
I don't go backwards.
It reads old.
I start at the beginning.
I know, but I always start with, like, if you know nothing about this, that's a big commitment to go. 40s comics are written differently. They just are.
Well, you guys want to see
RoboCop?
And my recommendation is you watch the RoboCop with Michael Keaton.
No, because that's not.
You're gonna get a lot of it.
That's not different.
That's going to lead you back to the original. You're
that's
going to love
insane.
it. No, just watch the original.
No, that's the film language is different.
All right. If we're just talking about gateway drugs, yes. Yeah. Okay, fine. Darwin Cook.
If you've never read
it,
which I love,
dynamite. And he's dynamite. And then you can go back to Will Eisner. I would say if you like the Will Eisner spirits, do yourself a huge favor. Find the Jack Cole Plastic Mans. Yeah, because the way he was doing them, very close to the Spirit, the way the Spirit was made.
Because they all worked on the same comics in the same studio.
Yeah.
Also,
and there's a Plastic Man, Brennan, I know you'll remember this, where the woman who has the cold heart but is drop dead gorgeous.
Right.
And eventually a scientist gets a crush on her and injects her with...
Turns her into stone. Yeah.
It's one of the best comic book stories I've ever read.
It is, and that's included in that book we used to have. That was
we used to have. That was
comics,
given to us.
Also, to further tie in, of course, this is a nice plug for our Patreon content, because you can get exclusive content from us over at patreon.podbean.com/punchup, where we talk about the Rocketeer. I really enjoyed that Spirit Rocketeer crossover that Dynamite did.
It was fun.
Was that Mark Waid?
Yeah.
Did that.
My favorite bit in that is what's his name? Cliff Secord freaking out in Denny Cole's lair in the crypt in the cemetery.
Yeah.
There's also a very fun.
You live in a cemetery? Jesus Christ!
Yeah, they're fun together. They also did. I think that was also Dynamite did. Green Hornet meets the Spirit too. That was Mike Allred.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever read Green Hornet.
I may have read it, but I don't remember as well as the.
I remember I remember the Shadow Green Hornet crossover. All right, anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry,
so
Ty Templeton. What's next, John?
Here, this one is not as obvious a tagline, but you tell me who this character sounds like. When you make a deal with the devil, there will be hell to pay.
Oh my God! Are we gonna watch?
No, folks, it's time to once again the secret star of the show, Robert E. Howard. It's time to meet Solomon Kane.
What's my power to now, John?
Yes, it's Solomon Kane. James Purefoy is Solomon Kane.
The first and last, the only time this character has been attempted, which is a big crying
And
shame.
I saw this
Love
movie
me some Solomon
years
Kane.
ago, and I liked it. I remember liking
Me
this
too.
movie.
Me
this
too.
was a pretty
Only
good.
I've
wear
never
the hat
seen
all
it.
the
I'm
way
looking
through it.
forward to it, guys.
Yeah,
This'll be
Purefoy.
a new
I
one
thought.
for me.
And once again, this is my memory. I thought Purefoy was a great Solomon Kane.
Yeah.
He's a very good actor in general.
He should be wearing the hat all the way through it, though. It's like Indiana Jones. Don't take the hat off.
He wears the hat plenty in it, though. He does wear the hat.
I'm already nitpicking. It's true.
I
Anyway,
don't need him
yeah,
to
I
always wear
remember
the hat.
liking this too. I don't own it, so it'll be the first time since it came out that I'll see it.
I'm looking forward to seeing it and to saying the following. Why didn't Hammer Films make a version of Solomon Kane?
That would have been amazing, of course. Well,
And why didn't they cross over with Captain Kronos? Vampire
I was going to say that
there you go. It's all there.
They sort of. I mean, Captain Kronos is close to.
I know. I wish that movie were better because the concept is so awesome. And John and I talk about it
but
constantly.
I love that movie, though. But I also.
I just think that Jurgen Prochnow or whatever, I don't think he's the...
Yes, and also I think I've told you about Brendan. I may have already done a little work on a remake idea of it. So
yeah, he's working on it.
I may have arced out a whole Captain.
John, we constantly talk about Brendan's projects.
Yeah.
Well, you know what we're going to do now, though, is wrap the podcast up.
Yeah.
Because we're
anyway,
4 hours in.
Go never bring up your own stuff.
Patreon.podbean.com/punchup for exclusive content. But that is going to do it for the IP squad this week. Until next week, the case file is closed.